So, I got caught off guard by something recently. It has to do with the 13th Amendment to the Constitution, which abolished slavery. The amendment reads, in part, "Neither slavery nor involuntary servitude, except as a punishment for crime, shall exist within the United States." All of that made perfect sense to me, minus this one part, except as a punishment for crime. Basically, that says you can punish a criminal with slavery. And we do, all over the country, all the time. It's called prison labor. We're all sort of familiar with the idea. Prisoners making license plates is the classic example, but that is the tip of the iceberg. Across the country, convicts do work in carpentry, sewing, mining, packaging, firefighting, telemarketing, fish farming, and artisanal cheese making. That last one is why this is back in the news. Whole Foods took some flack for selling felon-made cheese, and at a pretty hefty markup. Now, according to the American Civil Liberties Union, this isn't inherently a problem.
Most prisoners want to work, and jobs for prisoners can be a very positive thing.
That's David Fauti from the ACLU's National Prison Project.
But given the vast power inequality between prisoners and their employers, there's also a real potential for exploitation and abuse.
That potential is grounded in the fact that this really is slave labor. Inmates can be forced to work as long as they're deemed fit, and can be punished if they don't, including, in some cases, with solitary confinement. And then there's the question of money. We don't have to pay prisoners a dime for their work. Some states do require that prisoners are paid, but courts have consistently ruled that any pay is, quote, by the grace of the state. In other words, just to be nice. Meaning, more broadly, that prisoners are highly vulnerable.
Prisoners can't unionize. If they're injured or killed on the job, in most states they're not protected by workers' compensation. So all of this creates a situation where the usual checks on employer exploitation and abuse simply don't operate.
This all means that there's no consistency in what prisoners are paid for those cheese wheels and telemarketing calls. Pay scales range from nothing to around the federal minimum wage, but many are paid under $1 an hour. And that can give the state what Fauti calls a perverse incentive to keep the prison population high.
Last year, when California was ordered to release some prisoners to relieve overcrowding, the state actually argued against it on the ground that it would reduce the state's access to prisoner labor.
Things get more uncomfortable when you consider that America does not have a great track record when it comes to prison labor. After the Civil War, southern states struggled with a sudden lack of slave labor, thanks to the 13th Amendment. And their solution, in part, was to use that same clause, except as a punishment for crime, as a loophole. Many states passed broadly racist vagrancy laws that allowed authorities to pick up blacks on charges like loitering, imprison them when they couldn't pay fines, and lease them out en masse to places like plantations. In other words, the South got its slaves back. This system of convict leasing wasn't totally abolished until 1941. Back here in 2015, though, what are we supposed to think about prison labor? Prisoners are treated light years better today, whether they're working or not. But there are also so many more of them. Our prison system has exploded since the 1980s, giving America far and away the biggest prisoner population in the world. And that population is racially skewed in the extreme. Around 40% of prisoners are black, even though only about 13% of the country is overall. The 13th Amendment, the abolition of slavery, that happened 150 years ago. And now, 150 years later, we have this prison system instead. And according to David Fauti, we should think hard about why we do.
The purpose of incarceration should be to protect public safety, not to provide a captive labor force for the government.
For more Seeker stories, be sure to check out this next episode on the number of innocent people exonerated after being on death row. In 1939, the United States most likely executed an innocent man. And let us know in the comment section below what you think of the subjects we're covering. And as always, thanks for watching.